Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for coming to the Matthew Show. Look, I have been on a quest to talk about politics, religion, community, sexuality, and all things about my neighbors in Northern Ohio. And it came down to Bay Village Nasty Women, a grassroots organization that started recently, but it's been doing big work. Before we get into the organization and the work that you've been doing, please introduce yourselves. Heather?
Hi there. My name is Heather Mccullough, and I kind of relocated here to Bay Village after living in Rocky River for a number of years after the 2016 election, and I grew up here in Bay too.
Right on. Thanks for coming on the show. Carrie?
Hi, my name's Carrie Eckel. I live in Bay Village. I'm a wife and a mother, and I work part-time, and now I'm an activist.
Wonderful. And Misty?
Sure. My name is Missy Ellick. I've been living in Bay Village for about 9 years with my family, raising 2 children with my husband who are in the public school system here in Bay. I work full-time as a director of communications and engagement for a real estate development company, and more recently became an activist and managed a campaign for a candidate running for state representative.
So talk about that candidate running for state representative. I think she won.
Yeah, so it's looking good. We declared a victory. We are going to wait till all votes are formally counted, but the outlook is good, and we believe that with the provisional ballots that still have yet to be counted, we will only maintain or expand our margin of victory. So that was Monique Smith. She lives in the district in Fairview Park. The district consists of 5 cities, which is Bay Village, Westlake, Rocky River, North Olmsted, and Fairview Park. And she's a mom just like us, and she was someone who represented our values. And the Bay Village Nasty Women, including myself, we all felt compelled to work really hard to get her elected. And it looks like it's been a positive outcome.
Okay, so I hear that a lot of people, actually, Heather, you said that you moved to Bay Village after 2016. Is that correct?
In the year 2016, I moved back to Bay. Yep.
Okay, and so Bay Village Nasty Women started after 2016, I'm assuming because of Trump's comments during the election. Can you tell me about the formation? Can you tell me about the feelings that made the Bay Village Nasty Women come to be?
Are you directing that to me, Matt?
Yes, ma'am.
No, I think the Bay Village Nasty Women, well, I think women all across America, period, were really exasperated and shocked and with Trump's winning the election, or at least the Electoral College, and really needed spaces to process that, and also spaces to talk about how can we make sure this doesn't happen again. And actually, the Bay Village Nasty Women started by our founding member who just kind of wanted to get a small little group of friends, a safe space to kind of process and talk things out. And people just kind of kept adding friends and adding friends and adding friends. And now I think I don't know, where are we at, Misty? A little over 700 people?
I think it's closer to 800, yeah.
Yeah, so just a collective emotion and collective action and wanting to make a better world. I think a lot of us were motivated to make a better world for our children and the next generation after us.
And what was that better world then, Heather or Carrie? Like, what is that better world that you want to make for your children that you didn't see coming after 2016?
Well, personally, it was the fear of what was going to happen. We're losing women by Trump weren't treated fairly or nicely, and his talk is grotesque, and he didn't portray himself as, you know, being for women and for the environment and a whole lot of other issues. It was just a real shock to the system.
I think that it's amazing that, you know, I've heard through the grapevine that that you guys weren't really active before Bay Village Nasty Women and had like grassroots organizations. Can you tell me, like, what was the? I'm still trying to figure out the real like catalyst of this movement and how you got to 800 people in this group, and who are these people?
So I could maybe speak to that a little bit. I wasn't politically active prior to 2016. I did do a little bit of canvassing for Hillary Clinton, but I thought that election was in the bag. I felt really confident going into that election day, thinking we were about to nominate or to elect the first woman president, and that was symbolic for women. And I think that, you know, the energy around that and the notion of having a woman to you know, fill the highest seat in the nation, in the highest position in the nation, was something that was inspiring to many. And having 2 young children, especially a daughter, that was really important to me personally. And so when she did not win, it just kind of triggered an awakening to me, because I felt guilty that I didn't do more, that I was complacent in thinking that she was a sure thing, because in my mind, she was the most qualified candidate for president we've ever seen. And the fact that, you know, misogyny won over her, just kind of, you know, set a fire in my belly to want to fight against that and fight back, because, you know, it was clear to me on that day that misogyny won, and no one is going to come and save us but ourselves. That's something Heather Mccullough says often. There was no one coming to save us. We had to do the work and channel our feelings into something good. And I think that's what members of this group have found in each other, is a supportive environment that teaches and encourages and empowers women to become activists and to want to work towards change. Many of us have never done this kind of work. Many of us were too shy to even talk to our friends about politics. It was just something that was off the table in conversations, off the table when going to happy hour with your friends. You don't talk about politics. But because of this group, because of what happened in 2016 and the work that we're doing, we're having these conversations with our friends, with the soccer moms, with the parents in the PTA, and we're able to talk about it first and then invite them to different events and invite them to canvas with you or drop literature and maybe make some phone calls. And it just becomes a supportive environment that's truly special, and that we found community in each other and friendships that I know are going to last a lifetime. And I've spent so much time with Heather and Carrie over the last 4 years doing the good work together. And the other thing, you know, you want to know who is in this group. It's multi-generational. You've got young high school, like women who are just out of high school and some out of college even, all the way up to women in their 80s and maybe older. I don't know if they're on Facebook, maybe. But we have, it's become this really special multi-generational group of mostly women who are demanding change.
You said something there about you felt guilty. You felt guilty that misogyny won out with the last election, and therefore Bay Village Nasty Women was created, and this work that you're doing. And it's amazing that you started with no political experience, not talking about it, like you said, at bars and restaurants or with friends or family. It was just off the table, to campaigning and basically running a campaign and winning an election for state representative. That is a big, what is that? Is that a 180, a 360, a 720? I don't know, but it's some kind of rounds and circles. But you felt guilty, you said. What was that guilt? Where did it come from? And I'm just going to put this out there to anybody who wants to answer this. What was this guilt? And I'm asking this from the perspective that the female white suburban vote was big to getting Trump elected in 2016.
Yeah.
Maybe speak to that a little bit. I work as a children's librarian, and the night of the 2016 election, I had my book club with tweens, and I was pretty surprised because I work in a district that I thought was fairly conservative, and every single kid in my book club was in a panic on election night. They all shared with me their fears, like Carrie talked about. What will happen if Trump is elected, when he has said this about women, when he has said this about people with who are handicapped and have disabilities. And I just remember thinking to myself, we're not going to let this happen. How could it ever? Like Misty said, I thought, Hillary was a shoo-in because she was literally the best presidential candidate we had ever had up until that point. And when I woke up the next day, I really felt that I had let all of those children down, that I did not do enough work to ensure a safe space for them to grow up in, and that I was complacent about my democracy, about our democracy. And I kind of made a pledge from that day forward that I wouldn't take it for granted again. And I've been working my tail off ever since. So I think in terms of like guilt is like feeling I didn't fulfill my obligation to our democracy.
I agree.
I think
with
the League of Women Voters says, democracy is not a spectator sport. And I think that's really, really to the point.
I think we most certainly took it for granted. We had Obama for 2 terms. And when you think about it, it wasn't white women who got him elected. It was Black women who got him elected. And Black women have been the backbone of the, Democratic Party forever. And we took that for granted. We didn't get involved enough to work towards change. And I didn't really understand that fully until I think more recently, just like what it was, why I was feeling guilty. It was because I just took it for granted that the work was always going to be done by somebody else, that, the good guys were always going to win,
Mm-hmm.
That kind of mentality. Right. And here we saw this misogynist bully going up against, the most qualified candidate, female, and we took it for granted, thinking it was just going to happen. And we, just like Heather, we just didn't do enough work. We didn't do any work.
I don't feel like I felt guilty. I felt like I just wasn't there for anything before that time. I mean, it wasn't even in my radar. And then all of a sudden it was glaring in the face and couldn't be avoided any longer. We had to take charge and do something.
Can you guys juxtapose this guilt or this misogyny that you see coming out of the 2016 election with any other trends, negative trends that you see popping up in 2018, 19, and 20, especially this year? I feel that there's lots of work to be done across many spectrums. How do you see your work unfolding into, say, race relations, religious tolerance, the LGBTQ plus communities?
I think it bleeds out into really everything. With this presidency, we have, I feel like, a reverse on social progress. And I don't know, I can only speak for myself individually, but I feel like I have been challenging myself to connect with other communities outside of maybe my own particular bubble, and work with people that are financially disadvantaged. I spent a lot of time in a homeless shelter this past year and doing some work with that, trying to hear other voices. Something a good friend of ours, Liz Harmath, mentioned that, when you talk a lot to Trump supporters, they're really nice people, but they're really nice people to people they know, and not so nice or not so thoughtful to other populations that maybe don't go to the same church or worship the same way that they do, who might have a different skin color. So I myself personally have been trying to challenge myself to learn.
Yeah, I mean, I could maybe talk a little bit about that too. 2020 has been such a tough year to see what's happening in the world, social and racial injustices, and yeah, I think white women are taking the challenge to learn and understand more and open their minds more in a way that, you know, I've never seen before. And I think that's a great start. It's not enough, but it's a great start. You know, but I do feel that through our activism, the conversations that we're having, those uncomfortable conversations that we're having, that we encourage in our group, those conversations will again spread out to conversations with family members and friends and outward into the community. And that kind of, you know, it's a quiet form of activism, but it is effective. But, you know, I see great things happening with many of our members are in the Bay Village Anti-Racist Network. And that's, you know, Matthew, I know you're a part of that too. And I think it's incredible work that they're doing to hold, you know, school boards and city leaders and all these people accountable. That's activism. And many of our group members are doing that too. And we will continue to do that work. I think it's something that is important to all of us. We're learning, we're doing the work, and we're just getting started, you know?
You know, one thing that we always hear about when we're talking about anti-racism work, we hear the word white privilege. And white privilege is sometimes characterized as the way that white people can walk away from problems in the Black community. It's there, but it's not yours. You turn it off. Go back to doing what you do, and you only are involved with it or care about it when you are involved. You get the choice to do that. Me being a man talking to Bay Village nasty women about misogyny, is there anything that I turn off or we turn off or anything that we can call male privilege that you would like to touch on to maybe educate me?
I bet Heather would want to take this one, but I'd like to give an example of male privilege. A neighbor of mine was talking to me the other day, and he was kind of saying how his wife is a liberal, and you know she's you know that's fine, but he works with a lot of people who you know are Trump supporters, Republicans, blah blah blah, and she's so big into you know Planned Parenthood and protecting she's very pro-choice and that sort of thing, and then, you know I know it's important to her, it just doesn't really affect me. And I was like, that right there's the problem. It doesn't affect you. So let me ask you right now, choose a body part of yours that you would be willing to relinquish to government control, any part of your body. And he's like, well, no part of my body. And I was like, exactly. I said, your wife cares about the fact that she doesn't want government control over her body, but that is not an issue for you because that doesn't directly impact you because no piece of your body is going to be regulated. I said, we need more men speaking up and speaking out on these issues because that right there is the problem. It doesn't affect men. Therefore, no one's going to pay attention to it because when you look at our state legislature, you know, 26% of the Ohio legislature is filled by women. We're severely underrepresented. Mm-hmm. And so why would a white male legislator care about that? Because it's not an issue that impacts them. That's male privilege.
She pointed at you, Heather.
I think Misty answered it right there on the head. I mean, I don't know, where does it end? I think sexism is one of them, I don't know, I don't want to say an invisible ism, but it's a very socially acceptable ism. And, you know, I was thinking about it. I was at the polls yesterday and I was there all by myself. And I had several white men harass me, use vulgarities with me, make accusations to me about.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah. A lot.
Oh, yeah. I got called a baby killer. I had the F-bomb thrown at me. And I had to ask myself, would this really be going on? One, if I wasn't by myself, maybe there was a second person there. But two, if I were a man or if a man was there with me. And I think the answer to that would be no. So I think we as women face discrimination on a daily basis, really.
Carrie, I wonder, like, how does a man speak out then? You said Misty and Heather both said representation, and they said to speak out on behalf of or for the issues. But just like speaking out as a white person for Black issues and not being Black, the man could feel, I don't know, uncomfortable speaking about it. Maybe worried about speaking the wrong thing, saying the wrong thing, representing in the wrong way. Like, what is the first step? What is the steps to speak out on those issues and to get comfortable doing that, or making mistakes and not getting beat up?
Maybe just acknowledge that it's an issue, that, acknowledging it first and is the first start to knowing what's around you. It's the same with any other issue. If you acknowledge that it exists, that we have, that there's racism or then you can speak to it if you try to learn and acknowledge it.
Do you think that being a woman allows you to be more empathetic to other minorities? Because what I heard described here is almost the same as somebody from the Black community would say, but in juxtapose that with the word woman. Because I'm a woman, I get this. Because I'm Black, I get this. And it's very easy for somebody to go, you're just looking into that. You're using it as an excuse. I mean, is there more empathy because of this situation toward other communities?
I think as a woman, you are a minority, so you fit into those same type of groups that are marginalized. And as a woman, you're caring for children and other people in your life, so you have a lot of those empathies built in to your everyday life.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a lot of intersectionalities there between like sexism and racism and, I think that intersectionality is what sort of allows us to be empathetic and allies to the marginalized, at least for me. I mean, I'm not just a woman, but I'm also an Asian woman. And I think racism and sexism, I experience both of those things. I have experienced both of those things, sometimes at the same time and also separately. So it's, I think that has allowed me to be more empathetic.
Moving away from the deep philosophical conversations about misogyny, race, and gender, what do you? I want to go into the Ohio politics a little bit, and the areas that we live in. I think we live in a very good city, Bay Village. It's an affluent city. It has great schools, low crime. It is great neighbors. It is the cities I've grown up in all over Northeast Ohio. With that said, there are issues in Bay Village and other places in Northeast Ohio and Northern Ohio that are apparent, but they're kind of covert apparent, but you have to live it to experience it. What are some of those things that you might see like in Bay Village or in other towns in Northern Ohio that you think that are issues that you really want to tackle, that you really think that should be spoken about more loudly and get more people involved with?
As it relates to like state politics or just like more on a community level?
You know what? Anything here from my example, then I'll put this out is like, for example, as you mentioned, I'm part of a Bay Village Anti-Racism Network.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up in towns like this. I am half Black. I lived in towns of 95 to 98% white my whole life. I have, like you, Misty, experienced racism. There and some pretty nasty racism, but at the same time, I want to acknowledge that they are good towns with a lot of great people. Yet I'm still doing the work as a minority with a minority view within that town because I know that it exists, even though it's not acknowledged. So, I'm wondering what is on your plate or your guys' plate that is something that Ohio needs to focus on in this Bay Village, Rocky River, Avon, or wherever, that we should start talking about louder?
I mean, if we're talking about racism, I think, speaking out when we see it, being less tolerant to racism when we see it. I think about certain family members who, are blatant racists, and, not being quiet anymore about that is a start. But on a community level, it's again, with the Bay Village Anti-Racist Network, the work that group is doing to have conversations with city leaders and school districts and anyone who you can get a meeting with to really educate and put together a plan to understand, where you can root out racism where it exists, and even just bias, and to teach those things, right? I'm actually working on the strategic plan for Bay Village City School District. And in there's a lot of language about, understanding bias, and, the school district's committed to implementing that kind of change. But if it weren't for activists, that stuff would just kind of go unnoticed. So I think it's supporting activists to really reach out and have those conversations with your school districts and your community leaders to educate and inform, and don't let up on it. That's why you have elected leaders, to represent your constituents. And, if you're not having those conversations with them, or they're not willing to have those conversations with you, then run against them.
100%. As a grassroots organization, I think there's a lot of people that probably think that they want to start something like you started, and especially how much impact and influence you had in such a short period of time. It might be almost intimidating to a lot of people to say, well, I'm never going to be that, and I know you probably didn't think you were going to get somebody in office within the short period of time that you did, and of course, support many other candidates and have a 800 person group within Bay Village. But you did. If you could briefly, I want to go down the line, and just what would you give for advice for anybody that's listening to this that might be in a different town, in a different city, in a different part of the United States, that is thinking about taking some action and starting something? What would you say?
Anyone want to start?
Well, I think they can do it. I mean, we belong to another group called GER, Grassroots Resistance, and some of the media that we've received with the groups has gone across the United States, and they received an email from a group in California saying, hey, we're a group of women that we're concerned about what's going on, and we've been drinking wine, but now we're thinking that we can do stuff too. We can take on the local politics and change things. So just by being us and people hearing about it spawns new ideas and new people and new things happening. Even within the group, there's people who are taking things on their own and going away from the group and doing lots of other things that are making impacts.
Yeah,
And there's that quote. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
There's that quote out there that never doubt a small group of concerned citizens can change the world, because indeed that's only who has. It really just takes two people getting together, talking about what's important to them and saying, hey, right on, what can we do? And it builds from there. And that's how this group started, was, 2 friends talking, 3 friends talking, 4 friends talking. And I think what the beauty of a lot of these women's groups is the way that we do it collaboratively and collectively. It's a safe space to grow in, rather than being real hierarchical. We're really just collective and throw things out there, see what sticks and see what people are gravitated to, and run with it.
And we also had, some good fortune in having, the Democratic Party, the Cuyahoga Democratic Party, offered, training and, and then Main Street training. And then there's this other group called OPAL, Ohio Progressive Action Leaders. I think that's what it stands for. And they held several trainings and sort of, different ideas where we would share ideas on how we can strategize, training on canvassing and phone banking, text banking, and how to speak to voters, persuasion voters. And we learned, over the last 4 years, we gathered so much information as we kept building. And I think through just, building an understanding, getting some training under our belt, using those resources, that's what kind of got us to this place where I felt like, okay, I know how to, cut canvassing turf in Vote Builder because of my training. So that could be an asset to managing a campaign. We've learned about messaging tactics at work. That could be helpful to a campaign. And then many of us have, professional skill sets that we were able to leverage in the campaign too. And we just put together a plan and worked towards it. But it was a lot of information that we gathered over the last couple of years that I think really laid the groundwork for us to be able to do this. And we didn't learn about those training opportunities except for what was posted in our group and our forum. And, oh, there's this training that's being offered by the Ohio Democratic Party, or this training offered by, Rust Belt Rising and, other groups that are out there. And we just kind of piggybacked onto those opportunities. And that's, for me at least, that really helped to just expand my knowledge base.
Well, I would love to jump in there, with Ohio Progressive Action Leaders.
Mm-hmm.
That was a group that formed from, like, say, the leaders from Bay Village Nasty Women. We got together with leaders from Lakewood, and then we had a regional leadership group, and then that regional leadership group connected with other regions, and then eventually created the Ohio Progressive Action Leaders. And that all happened within the last 4 years. And that was all people being pissed off and wanting to create change, so it's been a lot of great collaborative, collective work.
So I think the moral of this story is talk to everybody and just do it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, I'm running out of time on my free Zoom, which is sad because I logged in with my wrong Zoom. So it's saying it's counting down as we speak, 2 minutes and 23 seconds. But I want to say thank you very much for coming on and telling us about your story, talking a little bit about politics, ideologies, and giving some great advice for people who are all over the United States, maybe wanting to start something of their own. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.